What's going on, y'all? I'm KM Best, and every content creator says that this patch is the biggest patch in the history of the game, but this one might do the absolute most to change the metagame from what it previously has been, but at the same time, it might not do enough. Let's check it out. First up, reverting one of the least liked, in my opinion, nerfs of all time, Dr. Doom is now going back to being a flat 15 power, 5 across each location. 5 for the Dr. Doom, and those DoomBots are back at 5. I can think of several people who will be overjoyed to hear this news, and personally, I think it's a little bit overdue. Doom was sort of the bellwether for 6-cost cards, but that doesn't mean that he was too strong. It meant that the other 6-cost cards were too weak. And we now see that with, those 6-cost cards aren't really showing up in the metagame anymore. A lot of the power of the game is concentrated in 5 and 4 and even sometimes 3-cost cards. And those 6-cost cards just aren't worth doing anymore without Dr. Doom. So it's less that those cards, Dr. Doom getting removed, didn't actually open up any space for them. Instead, those cards need to be improved, raised up to his level, and of course, bringing him back to his original level is a great first step towards that. Doomwave decks will likely see a significant increase from this, not necessarily super significant, but the fact that he now no longer just loses to Silk, a DoomBot as 4 power, a Silk as 5, that's good. That's definitely a good thing to have for this card going forward. Speaking of cards that no longer beat Dr. Doom, Captain Marvel getting a little bit of a downgrade, now a 4/4, and that should make her less of an auto-include in, everything. Between the Zabu Darkhawk decks and the move decks, there was a preponderance of Captain Marvel, and I do think, once again, that it really does matter that she no longer beats out a DoomBot. That is a very important breakpoint with the buff to Dr. Doom. So Captain Marvel getting toned down just a little bit. I think this was well overdue. Even if Move is, in my opinion, likely not the top deck anymore, it's still nice to see that they were able to catch up quick enough to be like, okay, we need to do something about this Move deck. We gotta tone that down a little bit. Captain Marvel appearing in the Darkhawk decks instead of cards like Iron Lad is honestly a little bit of a canary in the coal mine for that card just being a little overtuned, so I consider this a very solid change. It's one that I would have made. Another change I would have made, and to be honest with you, I don't think this does anything to the card. Legion is still just unbelievably strong. 5/8 to 5/7, I don't care. I'll still play him in every deck I currently play him in. His effect is just too strong. In the article that the developers put out alongside this, their reasoning for this, they said that Legion was a card they wanted to decrease the appearance rate of because he removed too much of the variance of Snap. And I think that's why you see so many good players love this card so much, because the less variance there is in a game, the more room there is for the better player to win. And that is why you see people who are just generally great players who are like, this is the best card in the game, because it allows them to activate that skill expression in ways other players simply cannot. And I don't think a single thing changes about that dynamic because Legion moving from a 5/8 to a 5/7. Nothing. This is still a great card. Every deck that plays him will still play him. More decks should play him, probably. I don't see any problems from this. This is a big one. This is the maybe not effective death knell of an archetype that has been a consistent metagame player in Marvel Snap for a really long time, basically since January. Zabu Darkhawk now no longer gets a Rockslide discount. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. It's entirely possible that some form of, Silver Surfer Darkhawk can pop up. I'd actually already been trying Zabu in there in some other situations because, let's say you have your Darkhawk, you have your Shang-Chi. This is something that could actually go somewhere. I would be interested in experimenting with, Zabu Surfer. I don't think that's the end of the world here. I don't think it's the end of the line, but what I can tell you is it's likely the end of the line for that deck as currently constructed, and the beginning of the line for God knows what else. I mean, this is immediately one of, in my opinion, the stronger 3-cost cards in the game. getting this card down on turn 3 really increases the amount of time your opponent has to draw rocks. You get it down on turn 4, well, there's only 2 draws left. You get it down on turn 3, there are 3 whole draws left that you can fill up with rocks. It really helps the math here. It's why Zabu into Rockslide was so strong, and now it just is that all the time. I don't even know if this is a nerf exactly. It's a change to how the package interacts with the rest of the metagame, but I mean, I think this card might be not necessarily better, but at least a little bit more widely applicable. You might be able to play Rockslide outside of dedicated Darkhawk Zabu decks now. It might just be that good. And I do also kind of like that it sort of opens up space for, like, you know, what if they put a 5-cost Rockslide? What would that look like? We have Korg at 1, we have Rockslide at 3 now. What would 5 look like? Do like a 5-6, put 3 rocks in there? Is that the kind of thing that they could do? I don't know, but I'm definitely interested. And this is a very, very solid card if you are still going to be willing to play Darkhawk. Obviously, I will play around a little bit with Darkhawk Surfer, Zabu, Shang-Chi, Darkhawk, and then just this seems pretty compelling to me. We'll have to see if it actually pans out, because right now, I will say, the timing of this nerf is a little bit interesting, because the Darkhawk deck has, in my opinion, almost never been worse. Like, almost every top deck is built to beat it in some way. You have the move deck that is built to obsolete Shang-Chi and Enchantress. You have the Brood deck that does the same thing. The Kitty Pryde deck that is built to throw priority to you to obsolete Shang-Chi. And of course, the Deadpool deck, which does the same thing. Like, almost every deck is built so hard to beat it. And I think, in that sense, maybe it is good that it is getting nerfed then. Because if every deck is warping itself around the power of that deck, maybe, even though it is proven to be beatable, maybe that's not a long-term healthy pattern you want in the metagame. The final change is to a card that pretty much only I played. I've made videos on my Lady Deathstrike Thanos Galactus build, and this is a solid buff to it. Every point of power that this card gets is extremely dangerous. You need to be very aware of what the breakpoints this card is hitting are, because right now you forge this and it is hitting everything below 7. That is a ton of stuff. This will nuke a Brood lane. This will nuke an Absorbing Man lane. It will nuke a Brood lane on its own now. I mean, it already could, but now there's more reason to play it. I'm pretty excited to see what people come up with for this card. As many of you know, if you're longtime viewers of the channel, you will have already seen my build of this in action. It remains, actually, statistically, the best deck I've played this month, for me at least. And it is still something that is very, very powerful. Now, with a buff, it remains even stronger. I cannot wait to see what other people come up with for Deathstrike, but frankly, I mean, I'm excited about this one. I will say, something does bother me about this sort of buff to a card that is no longer in the caches, and I felt the same way about the Living Tribunal one. I think it might be something they should try to avoid in the future, but they're caught between a rock and a hard place. Either they give the people a kind of bad card and they just never change it, or they induce a little bit of FOMO by changing this card, buffing it afterwards. I don't know which one would be better. I don't really know, but I'm interested in what you think, because I think the trap they seem to be caught in is they don't want people to spend their spotlight caches on bad cards, so they'll buff the cards backwards if they get it wrong, and that's the smart thing to do, because you obviously don't want to release them busted. You just want to, like, slowly figure out how good they are and make them a little bit better if you can. But the fact that they're no longer in the spotlight caches means that other players who might have opened their caches if they released at this power level aren't able to do so. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments below. So, we've covered why I think these changes could be incredibly impactful. The death of, or potential death of, Darkhawk is a big one. The nerf to Captain Marvel, the buff to Doctor Doom, those are big, important changes. But what did they miss? Well, they missed Brood Absman. And outside of the Legion change, nothing touches that, and I don't see anything that's really going to knock it off its perch outside of other decks that currently exist. I don't think any of these changes add something to the metagame that takes down Brood Absman. So, if you're looking to take down Brood Absman, start with Deadpool and Kitty Shuri. Anything that goes vertically as much as you can while avoiding, of course, the terrors of Shang-Chi is going to be your best bet. So not changing the best deck, but basically everything around it is now different. And those three, of course, are the decks that I would recommend moving forward. So this has been my review of the OTA, all of the changes that were made. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I have been KM Best. You have been wonderful. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next one. The next one, spoiler alert, is going to be a video on Shuri Kitty, which I think is probably the best deck to play post-OTA, and I think maybe was pre-OTA as well, so make sure you check that out. Y'all, have a good one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.